In the winter of 2001, a storm hit Wall Street. Headlines raced to break the news. A company that, not long ago, was hailed as one of America's greatest and most innovative, had just declared bankruptcy. Billions of dollars vanished overnight. Thousands of employees found themselves without jobs, and investors stood frozen, watching their dreams collapse before their eyes. Executives now faced the prospect of prison. Imagine a corporate giant, a company once seen as the Queen of Wall Street. Its assets exceeded $63 billion. Its annual revenues topped $100 billion, and its stock price soared to nearly $90 a share. Its employees lived in luxury. Its shares were flying high, and the company was considered the crown jewel of the American economy. But suddenly, in the blink of an eye, everything collapsed. What happened that night was only the final chapter of a much longer story, a story that began with shining promises and ended with a scandal that shook the entire world. Welcome to our channel. Today, we tell the story of Enron, the empire built on illusion. But to understand how this company reached such a dramatic collapse, we need to go back a little in time, to the mid-1980s. The American economy was undergoing major transformations. Oil and gas prices were swinging wildly after the shocks of the 1970s. And under President Ronald Reagan, U.S. policy moved toward one idea: deregulation. What deregulation meant was simple. The government would no longer impose strict limits on prices or decide who could buy and sell energy. Instead, the market would be left to move freely. The goal, at least on paper, was clear. Competition would lower prices and increase efficiency. But this new freedom also created the perfect playground for risk-taking and speculation. And in 1985, out of this new era, a fresh company was born through the merger of two mid-sized firms: Houston Natural Gas, based in Texas, and InterNorth, from Nebraska. The result was a brand new entity called Enron. At first, the name wasn't glamorous, but the ambitions behind it were far greater than the company's actual size. At the center of this new venture stood a man named Kenneth Lay. Lay was born in Missouri into a poor family. His father ran a small gas station, known for his deep religious faith. That humble background shaped Kenneth's character. He understood hardship from an early age and dreamed of climbing all the way to the top. Through intelligence and relentless effort, he rose through the ranks of the energy industry and eventually built close ties with powerful figures in Washington. Kenneth Lay wasn't a cold, distant executive. He was more like a politician wearing a businessman's suit. He knew how to smile before members of Congress, how to speak the language of investors to make them feel secure, and how to convince the media that his company represented the future. His vision was bold and ambitious. Enron would no longer be just a traditional pipeline company. It would become a financial empire, buying and selling energy the same way stocks are traded on Wall Street. And at that time, the market conditions played right into his hands. With deregulation, natural gas was no longer sold at fixed government-set prices. It could now be bought and sold through private contracts. Enron seized this opportunity brilliantly. It no longer earned money simply by transporting gas through its pipelines. It introduced a new idea: energy futures contracts. To understand this concept, imagine a farmer planting wheat. He fears that prices might drop by harvest time. So he makes a deal today, agreeing to sell his crop 6 months later at a fixed price. That way, he secures his income in advance. Enron applied the very same principle to gas and electricity. The commodity was no longer the gas itself, but the contract written on paper, a contract that could be bought, sold, and traded among investors, just like shares on a stock exchange. This innovation gave Enron the image of a modern, forward-thinking company. It wasn't seen as just another energy firm, but rather as a mini stock exchange for energy, a company trading more in the future than in the present. The media quickly embraced this narrative. Articles began to appear calling Enron the new generation of energy companies and claiming it could lead the U.S. market into a new era. Kenneth Lay used this growing reputation to build a powerful political network in Washington, earning himself the nickname the Godfather of Energy Deregulation. And so, within just a few short years, Enron evolved from the merger of two mid-sized firms into a dazzling name that provoked both fascination and curiosity. Everyone began to wonder, what would this company do next? At the start of the 1990s, a man entered Enron who would change its destiny forever: Jeffrey Skilling. He was different from the rest of the executives. He didn't see Enron as a traditional energy company. In his mind, it was a financial technology firm, a company blending energy and Wall Street. To Skilling, gas and electricity weren't just commodities to be sold and consumed. They were numbers, contracts, opportunities to be traded like stocks and bonds. But to make that dream a reality, he needed a new way to make Enron look like it was generating enormous profits. Profits that would attract investors and keep its stock price soaring. That's when he introduced a method known as mark-to-market accounting. But what does that actually mean? In traditional accounting, profits are only recorded after the money is actually received. For example, if a company signs a 10-year contract to supply electricity to a customer, it recognizes revenue gradually, year after year, as each payment comes in. But Enron, under Skilling, changed the rules completely. The moment a contract was signed, the company would immediately record all the expected profits from the next 10 years, as if they had already been earned today, even if not a single dollar had entered the company's accounts yet, even if the deal could collapse at any moment. Here's a simple example. Imagine your friend owns an apartment, and you sign a 10-year lease for $1,000 per month. In normal accounting, your friend would record the income month by month, $1,000 at a time. But if he thought like Enron, he'd write in his books on day one, "I just made $120,000. The total value of all 10 years, up front." The result? Overnight, a modest company suddenly appeared to be a giant on paper, with profits that looked spectacular to investors. With this new accounting trick, Enron's financial reports began to shine like diamonds. Every new contract instantly translated into massive profits, even when the reality was completely different. Investors didn't ask too many questions. The numbers looked stunning. The media called Enron an economic miracle, and the market applauded. The message everyone heard was simple: Enron is a company that never loses. But behind those dazzling numbers, the truth was far darker. Those profits were nothing more than promises on paper, wildly optimistic forecasts, presented to the world as if they were real money. All it would take was a few bad contracts, or a sudden drop in prices, and the illusion would start to crack. But thanks to this clever trick, the surface stayed shiny, while beneath it, the foundation was slowly falling apart. It wasn't just an accounting game, it was a psychological illusion. Investors always chase companies that look successful, and the more impressive Enron's numbers appeared, the more investors rushed to buy its stock. The higher the demand, the higher the share price climbed, and the stronger the illusion became. Enron had created a self-feeding cycle of deception. Fake numbers built confidence, confidence drove up the stock price, and the rising stock price convinced everyone that Enron was a genuine miracle. By the mid-1990s, Enron had become a true icon in the business world. It was no longer just an energy company. It was expanding into fields no one had imagined: telecommunications, the internet, and even strange ventures like weather forecasting and selling climate data to corporations. The message Enron sent to the world was clear: we're not just a gas and electricity company, we are the company of the future. The American media was enchanted by that image. Fortune magazine named Enron America's most innovative company for 6 consecutive years. Business reports overflowed with praise, and analysts described Enron as the Apple or Google of energy. The company's stock price began to skyrocket, from just $20 to more than $90 a share by the late 1990s. Employees felt they were living inside an economic miracle, each one believing they were part of a success story that would last for decades. As for the top executives, they lived a life far removed from reality. Private jets carried them from city to city, lavish mansions, extravagant parties, and dazzling conferences where millions were spent just to showcase Enron's achievements. They acted as if they were on top of the world, invincible, unstoppable, untouchable. But behind that glittering facade, there was a dangerous secret. Enron's chief financial officer, Andrew Fastow, realized that the mark-to-market method alone wasn't enough to hide the company's growing losses, so he came up with an even more devious plan: to create hundreds of fake entities known as Special Purpose Entities, or SPES. These weren't real companies. No factories, no employees, no actual business. They were nothing more than empty shells on paper, legal tools with one purpose only: to absorb Enron's debt and keep it out of sight. But how did the manipulation actually work? Whenever Enron's debts or losses began to pile up, they simply transferred them to one of these ghost companies. On Enron's official books, the numbers looked perfect: profits rising, stock prices soaring, everything sparkling clean. But in reality, mountains of debt were quietly building up inside those hidden entities. And while the world applauded Enron's so-called financial genius, the truth was that the company had become a castle made of paper. Everything was built on deception, fake profits, fake companies, and a shiny image masking the rot beneath. The more Enron lied, the more the markets admired it. Ironically, Wall Street rewarded the company every time it inflated its earnings. A strange, vicious cycle. Lies created confidence. Confidence raised the stock price, and the rising stock price made the lies look even more convincing. While employees were celebrating and executives were spending millions on luxury and prestige, the truth was quietly moving toward one inevitable moment: the moment of collapse. As the new millennium began, cracks started to appear in the golden image Enron had built for itself. Analysts on Wall Street began to notice something strange, something that didn't quite add up. On paper, the profits were enormous, but in reality, the cash flow, the actual money coming in and out, was weak and deeply troubling. A question began echoing through the markets: how can a company this large show billions in profits, yet have so little cash to fund its daily operations? Some journalists and financial experts started digging deeper. They wrote about the complex maze that was Enron's business model. Its contracts, shell companies, and financial structures were so tangled that even professionals couldn't make sense of them. But amid the media hype and glowing headlines, it was hard for anyone to believe that something truly dangerous was hiding behind the shine. Then, in August 2001, the shock came. Jeffrey Skilling, the man seen as Enron's brain, the architect of its success, suddenly announced his resignation. The official reason? Personal matters. But Wall Street didn't buy it. How could the man leading what was called the greatest company in the world just walk away? The announcement planted seeds of fear. If the captain abandons the ship, does that mean it's already sinking? Within weeks of Skilling's departure, Enron's stock began to collapse at terrifying speed, from over $90 a share to less than $1 within just a few months. Investors who trusted the company lost billions. Employees, many of whom had invested their life savings and retirement funds into Enron stock, found themselves suddenly jobless and financially ruined. But the most shocking revelation wasn't the stock's collapse itself. It was the discovery that Enron's top executives knew exactly what was happening. While ordinary employees were forbidden from selling their shares in the name of maintaining market confidence, those same executives were secretly selling their own stock at the perfect time, walking away with millions of dollars in profit as the empire crumbled behind them. In December 2001, the announcement hit like a thunderclap. Enron had officially declared bankruptcy. In an instant, it went from being the jewel of Wall Street to the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history at the time. The collapse wasn't just the downfall of a single company. It marked the beginning of a scandal that would expose years of corruption hidden behind a glittering facade. When Enron declared bankruptcy in December 2001, the scandal exploded across the American and global stage. The question was no longer, why did it fail? But rather, how did it manage to fool everyone for so long? The catastrophe in numbers. Investors lost nearly $60 billion in market value. More than 20,000 employees found themselves jobless overnight. Retirement savings tied to Enron stock evaporated, leaving thousands of families facing a dark, uncertain future. Enron, once hailed as America's most innovative company, was now called the biggest fraud in Wall Street history. The U.S. Congress launched urgent hearings. Witnesses came forward, documents surfaced, and the media covered the story day and night. Corporate America found itself under the microscope, and investors everywhere asked in panic, if Enron could fall, who's next? The trials and the faces that fell. Andrew Fastow, the chief financial officer and mastermind behind the shell companies, pleaded guilty in exchange for a deal with prosecutors. He served years in prison after revealing the truth about Enron's internal schemes. Jeffrey Skilling, the CEO, was convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and manipulation. In 2006, he received a sentence of more than 20 years in prison, one of the harshest punishments in corporate history. Kenneth Lay, Enron's founder and public face, was also found guilty, but he died suddenly of a heart attack before the sentence could be carried out. His death sparked endless debate. Was it coincidence or an escape from justice? But the story didn't end there. One of the world's largest accounting firms, Arthur Andersen, the company responsible for auditing Enron's books, was found deeply complicit in the deception. It hadn't just looked the other way. It had shredded thousands of key documents to cover up the fraud. The result? Arthur Andersen collapsed entirely. Its century-old reputation erased overnight. It was a powerful message. Even those meant to guard the system could be part of the game. What happened with Enron wasn't merely the scandal of a single company. It was an earthquake that shattered faith in the entire U.S. market. Politicians were forced to reform the system. And investors learned a painful truth, that behind glowing numbers and corporate glamour can hide greed, deceit, and corruption without limits. From the wreckage Enron left behind, what emerged wasn't just the bankruptcy of a company, but lessons and new laws that would shape the American marketplace for decades to come. In the wake of the scandal, lawmakers in Washington realized that the financial system needed stronger safeguards. So, in 2002, came the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, one of the toughest corporate laws in U.S. history. It imposed personal responsibility on executives for the accuracy of financial reports, severe criminal penalties for accounting fraud, and strict new rules for auditing firms to ensure that another Arthur Andersen could never happen again. In other words, Enron's fall rewrote the rules of Wall Street, but what remained in people's memory went far beyond the laws. Today, the word Enron is no longer the name of a company. It has become a global symbol of greed, of corporate corruption, and of shiny numbers that often turn out to be nothing but a mirage. Yet perhaps the most painful part of the story is the fate of the ordinary employees. Thousands of people who woke up every morning for years, believing they were building a secure future, lost everything: their jobs, their savings, their retirement plans. Meanwhile, the very executives who led the company into ruin walked away with millions, some before the trials, others through quiet legal settlements. Enron proved that innovation without ethics isn't achievement. It's a ticking time bomb. That success built without transparency or integrity may shine brightly for a moment, but it will eventually collapse, no matter how long it takes. It's a story that speaks to every generation of entrepreneurs and investors. Don't be fooled by the glitter. Always ask, are these profits real or just promises on paper? And remember, trust takes years to build, but only a single moment to destroy. Enron no longer exists today, but the echo of its collapse can still be heard in every economics lecture hall and in every courtroom that deals with corporate corruption. It left the world with a warning that will never be forgotten, that wealth without conscience isn't success. It's a crime waiting to happen, and that the greatest losses are not measured in billions, but in the price of trust, once it's gone. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episodes.